Santorini sunsets are something else. We are in the middle of the Aegean Sea in Santorini, Greece, and it's known for its amazing, breathtaking sunsets. Join me for a tour today through Santorini, Greece in 360 VR video, so you can look in any direction you would like. And also, pardon the wind. There's a lot of wind here in Santorini, but I hope you enjoy the view specifically. I'll try to tell you more about the history when there's less wind. I'm Ariel. I run a show called Urbanist. Welcome everyone to Santorini in 360. Look at the sun setting there in the distance, absolutely gorgeous. Right down there, you see the views of Fira, which is one of the other major towns in Santorini, 28 square miles. Right over there we got Vigli, and now we're going to walk towards Fira, which is the main center where all the action is. This is the gigantic caldera. Right now we're 1,200 feet tall, give or take about 200, 300 feet. This is about the same height as the Empire State Building. Enjoy. Breathtaking that you can see the mountains there in the distance, different islands all around here, and the Cyclades, which is the name of the island chain. People have been inhabiting this island for more than 7,000 years. One of the oldest places that have been inhabited is down there in an area called Akrotiri, which is still viewable to this day. It's basically the Pompeii of Greece. But why such a unique shape for the island? Well, over here is what's called the caldera. And if you're familiar with Italian, Spanish, caldera means a hot pot. And it's because it's exactly that. The water is as deep as any New York City or London skyscraper. That's quite deep. And here we're very tall. That in the middle, that island is not inhabited, and the reason there is no habitation, there's not even farms, is because that is a volcano. Looks rather low. Well, that's what's called the shield volcano. And right behind it we have the old volcano. So that blew up 3,600 years ago. Let's walk around, enjoy more of the sights. Many of the beautiful cafes with sunset views right over here. I love the tiny little streets here. So where does the name Santorini come from? Sounds rather Latin for a Greek island. Well, Santorini is named after a Christian martyr, Saint Irene. Saint Irene is viewed in high regard in both the Catholic tradition and also the Greek Orthodox tradition. One of the reasons why it got its namesake like this is because for many centuries the Venetians and the Ottomans were at each other's throats. So this island doesn't only have Ottoman/Greek influence, but it also has Venetian. And hence you still see Catholic churches here to this day, which we're about to pass by one very soon. The entire island in ancient times used to be called Fira or Thira. Right in that mountain over there is where some of the ancient Minoans actually lived. Right down there as well. But they might have also lived right over here by the water. But why? How? Can you build a city or a village or a town on the water? Well, let's go back 3,600 years ago. Tremors were starting to be felt all along Fira, the island. The residents of Akrotiri knew that something bad was coming, so they started fleeing. They went over to the nearby islands. They might have headed over to Crete. Then suddenly a massive explosion comes from that volcano. The explosion is several times bigger than the one that happened in Pompeii, twice as bigger than the one that happened in Krakatoa. It is one of the largest volcanic explosions in all of history. That volcanic explosion unleashed a massive plume of ash that covered cities all around this area of the Aegean Sea. As far as China, they reported one of the worst crop seasons in their own history because the fallout from this volcano caused a massive dip in temperatures. But that wasn't the only thing that happened. Akrotiri was buried under ash. They found no bodies because they knew to leave on time. However, this spelt the end for the Minoan civilization because most of the Minoans were based in Crete, and they were relatively peaceful people, and they were very far advanced. As I mentioned, people were here since 7,000 years ago, and yet the Minoans were vulnerable to the whims of a massive natural disaster like a volcano. Just like any civilization, even our civilization today is vulnerable to a massive volcano. The volcano is what carved this landscape and made it possible for us to have these beautiful cliff sides. Because who knows what the terrain might have looked like before then. Maybe the mountain tapered off, but we have literally the terrain cut by the massive explosion. The skies would have looked red back then. It would have been shocking to many people. Today people flock to see the sunset. We have the beautiful hues of orange, pink, and blues. But just imagine seeing a deep, 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 deep red. And then suddenly darkness in the middle of the day. The explosion also unleashed an earthquake, and the earthquake unleashed a tsunami. And that tsunami was up to 400 feet tall and headed straight towards the island of Crete, which we can't see from this distance. Crete is one of the larger Greek islands, and that was the hub of the ancient Minoans. Those tsunamis, those dipping temperatures, and that fall of ash spelt doom to this civilization that was based in the middle of the Aegean. Well, what happened then? The Minoans were immensely weakened, and they were eventually taken over by the Mycenaeans. And the Mycenaeans were the people who were associated with the myth of Troy, or maybe it's actual history, the story of Homer. Here are many of the Orthodox churches that are still famous to this day. You need to get a good pair of watches. But that wasn't the last eruption. Eruptions kept coming more and more and more. There was eruptions all throughout the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s. There were fortifications by the Ottomans and the Venetians throughout this island, and they disappeared because of all the earthquakes and the volcanoes and the tremors. But then in the 1950s, that was the very last eruption to date. 1956, a massive earthquake destroyed most of Santorini. Many of the people fled not wanting to look back. The island was already pretty empty by then because many people fled during the beginning of the Greek independence. People thought that maybe Santorini would never recover, but something happened in the 1960s. All of a sudden, people got wind of this beautiful city along the cliffside because they started to rebuild slowly. These sites were unmatched, and people started flocking here. This was the jet age, where people were able to fly over from America in the course of maybe a day maximum. And ferries were started to be sent all throughout the islands. It became a massive tourist hub, a massive destination. Now it's known as one of the most popular destinations in the entire world because of its views. It's crazy to think about that a volcano actually carved the beauty that we see here today. But why are the houses white? A lot of people always ask that. Oop, watch your step here. Some rocks stick out, so watch your step. Why did they paint the houses white? Well, there is the practical reason. White reflects the sun, and it makes it easier to cool down any type of building. The second reason is white also acts as a natural disinfectant, which also helps with limiting disease or any type of pests. And then the legend, or maybe true story, it's still up in the air, is that during the tail end of the Ottoman Empire, Greek independence was kicking off. The Ottomans banned any imagery of the Greek flag, which is blue and white, with the cross in the middle. Well, in defiance, the islanders decided to paint their houses blue and white to show Greek independence. Though that reason, still don't know if it's true, so do your own research on that end. Let's walk a little bit more. I'll show you the tiny winding streets for the final 5 minutes. So cool. Right down there we have where you can catch different types of boats. A catamaran right down there, or a boat. And a lot of hiking trails, so you can go zigzag through the cliffside. It's such a romantic place. This is also the honeymoon capital of the world. A lot of people take engagement photos here. I actually saw a wedding earlier. And let's go right down here. I'll show you how beautiful the small streets are. So, beautiful views. Now, actually, just before I go, I mentioned that who knows, something might have been buried here. Well, in 350 BC, Plato, the famous philosopher, wrote two different books recounting an ancient city that was highly civilized, that encountered a massive natural disaster in which it caused it to sink into the ocean. This was the legend of Atlantis. People think Plato was recounting real history. Some others think he was completely making up a truly fictional tale. And others more reasonably think he was recounting allegory. But what if it is based on some true history? Because a volcano blew up here and destroyed the civilization. Maybe this was Atlantis. And maybe a bigger city is hiding in the deep seabed of the caldera. Because Akrotiri there in the distance actually had 3-story buildings. So just maybe this is Atlantis. But who knows? Interesting to think about, because Plato might have actually heard about it. Well, here now we're starting to see all the different shops, all the different bars to go, cocktails, frozen yogurt. We have a whole lot of stuff happening here. Now, usually this is packed to the very brim, but luckily, well, at least lucky for me and for this video, I'm able to show you a little bit more peaceful vibes here. So look at this. It smells like food. I'm hungry. So different restaurants all around. And here are the tiny winding streets that is famous for Santorini. Highly recommend coming around here. I hope you enjoyed this tour. This was a small walk through Santorini so you can get a sense of the city and its history. There's so much more here to explore. So thank you everyone who tuned in, enjoyed the story behind it, and let me know, what do you think? Do you think this is the real Atlantis? Curious to hear your thoughts. Keep being awesome and always keep on exploring. Have a great day, everyone.